What's going on today, Internet? Selfish here with Retrospect. Today we're going to take a look at the Powkiddy A30, which is a Game Boy Advanced Famiclone that is really comfortable to hold. It feels pretty much like a Game Boy Advance, but a little bit thinner. So let's go find out if this is the right device for me, or more importantly, if this is the right device for you. So let's go take a look. Powkiddy A30 comes in the traditional box that the Powkiddy devices come in when they don't want to put their name on it anywhere. It does tell you what all the buttons do on the outside, though, so you can use this as your user guide if you wanted to. It's pretty much the same thing on the inside. It does show that it has a 2.8-inch IPS display, Type-C charging, and a 1200 milliamp battery, which is a pretty small battery for a device like this. But we can talk about that as we get into it. Let's take a look inside. Here we have the device, which I took out and turned on. Wanted to make sure the battery was charged for this. Underneath here, we do have a USB Type-C charging cable, along with word paper. Looks like a nice colored guide, actually. It's not very often that you get a colored guide for anything here, and Powkiddy does have their name on this guide. Oddly enough, Powkiddy stopped selling this on their website, but they do sell it on their AliExpress page, so I'll throw some links down in the description so you can pick one up. Let's go over the I/O real quick. On the back here, we do have a sticker that tells you that it is a model A30 by Powkiddy. It tells you the same things that the box told you. So we have our shoulder buttons. We also have a screen brightness button, which we will take a look at here in a little bit. We also do have a menu button, and I believe on the back here it does tell you, yep, that's your home button, that's your brightness button. We also have in this SD card hole, it comes with a 32 gigabit SD card right there in the old SD card hole. On the sides, we just have some bumpers to hold on to. Make it look nice, make it look more like a Game Boy Advance. On the bottom here, we do have our power switch, which is the on-off switch. We do have a headphone jack hole. We do have a Type-C charging hole, and we do have a volume slider, which can be kind of nice in devices such as this. On the front here, we do have our D-pad, which is okay. It's decent for a device of this size with a 2.8-inch screen and such a small device. You wouldn't expect even a D-pad this big, so it's not too bad. We do have our start and select buttons, along with our face buttons. And they are super boingy, and they also are really tall, and they don't fit inside the casing very well. I don't know if you'll be able to see this on video, but they have a lot of wiggle room inside the casing. The other thing we have up on the front here is our speaker, which is an interesting placement for this because it will be under your hands, but I think they're trying to make it look like a Game Boy Advance, which also had a speaker in that same location. We'll fire it up here. It does have the TrimuiOS that Powkiddy started putting on some of their devices after they bought TrimuI. This is the OS from the A66 or the TrimuI Type S, the OS that everybody hated, and those handhelds, even though they could have performed well, performed very poorly until the community got behind them. And unfortunately, I've scoured the internet, and I have yet to find community support for this device, so that's an unfortunate thing. In our settings, we just have key mapping, stuff like that. It does say it runs at 628 megahertz and everything I found for it, but every device I've seen reviewed or online does have it at 717 megahertz, so it's under spec for their boxes. Before we get any games here, let's go over the only couple of things that I know about this device because there's not a lot of information out there. 2.8-inch, 320 by 240 IPS display. It's got an all-winner 628 ARM single-core processor and a 2D accelerator for a GPU. It's running on 64 gigs of LPDDR2 RAM. Its all storage is external. My guess would be the difference between this and the A66 and why we haven't seen community support as much for this yet, because on this device, the OS is on the memory card and not on the device itself, which brings in a whole different world of possible F-ups when you're trying to create a new operating system. In the game section here, we have 3 games that were pre-put on this device. My understanding is you aren't able to actually add to that library, so those 3 games are the 3 games you get. It does say it supports up to 10 systems. We have Arcade, Neo Geo, Famicom, Super Famicom, Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, Master Drive, SMS, PC Engine, and PlayStation. Let's take a look at a couple of games here and see if we can be impressed. This is apparently as low as the volume goes on here, and if you do go into the menu system, you don't have a way to change anything on here through RetroArch, which is unfortunate because I'm pretty sure that's running on the back end here, but there is nowhere in here to make changes. Let's just take a quick look at the trailing action we got going on here before I go try to figure out if there's no way to change the volume. We're going to play Street Fighter here on Game Boy Advance. This is not Street Fighter. Seems to work out pretty well. Okay, here we got a little Need for Speed on Game Boy Advance. Trying to cover the speaker a little bit, so my driving's a little off, but... It's not terrible. The only thing that kind of sucks is you probably could upscale this. And it's not allowing us to do that because we don't have any access to the menus, unfortunately. Alright, let's move along. Okay, we got Tony Hawk here on Game Boy Advance. Oh boy. Oh, it's just tricky when you're choppy like this to play a skateboarding game. Okay, I'm going to say that game is unplayable. We'll try some soccer, which I've never really known how to play on these, but I get a lot of people that ask to play it, so I try to. Boy, this is super choppy too. Not only can you hear it in the audio, which is obnoxiously loud and won't go away, let's try something else. Trying out a little Crash Bandicoot on PS1. I don't know why. This is like one of those systems where they included PS1 even though it can't actually play PS1. They don't do that as much anymore because almost every chip can play PS1 now. Again, I think if we could go into the settings, we could probably come up with something here to make this run a little bit better, but Crash Bandicoot is a no-go on PS1. We got Mortal Kombat on Sega. Sega seems to play pretty good on here, actually. It's playing at the right frame rate, and... The D-pad's not real forgiving, but it's not too bad, especially for a device of this size. So I guess if you want to play Mortal Kombat on Mega Drive, it's a good way to go. Last but not least, we're going to play the Neo Geo Metal Slug. Kind of thought this would work pretty good. This is kind of what this is made for. So what it really struggles with is PlayStation and Game Boy Advanced games, unfortunately. And I think that this could be fixed, so they could play like this Metal Slug game here. So there's definitely some games that'll play just fine on here. And there's others that you're probably not going to want to play on here. So there you have it. It's the A30 by Powkiddy. It does have a lot of potential. It's a really cool device. I just wish they would have given it a little bit more TLC. I feel like they designed it, and then they just kind of forgot about it. And threw the old TrimuiSmartS software on here that nobody liked, and forgot to change it before the device was launched. Now, these devices go usually between $35 and $40. I think that for that same price range, I personally would probably purchase myself, if this was going to be my device to use every day, I would go ahead and purchase myself the R36S. It's in the same price point. It's running a way better chipset. This will even play some Dreamcast games. It'll have no problem with the PS1 and Game Boy Advance games that I tried here on the A30. It won't have any issues with that. Now, if you don't want to go this route and you still want to stay in the Advance thing, because my big thing is, like, I've been trying to find the perfect Game Boy Advance. I never had one as a kid. You've heard me say it on the channel before, and I've just really wanted to get one. Another device made by Powkiddy that fits in the same price range is the V90. And this thing was really good, and then they added the Mio Mini software to it, and it made it way better. This is an awesome device to have. I'm a real big fan of the Powkiddy V90. And the flip form factor, it's so cool. The other thing you can do is what I initially did when I wanted a Game Boy Advance, and I sort of built one. I found a Game Boy DS Lite at a garage sale, and I turned it into a Game Boy Macro, which does play Game Boy Advance cartridges. So it plays DS and Game Boy, and here you can still put your ROMs on here if you wanted to, or you can run an EverDrive. Either way, you'll still get all your Game Boy Advance games, and this thing works better than pretty much anything because it plays it almost natively. It's not quite like going to an analog pocket, but this is actual hardware from Nintendo. And you're able to play all your cartridges from any of these systems that were able to play in the DS Lite. So for the $15, now I did go a little bit more expensive in the way that I built this, But for the same price, you could build something similar to this. This case is metal, so it was not a cheap case to get. But other than that, all I did was took a DS Lite with a broken top screen and turned it into this. And so I think that the macro would be the way to go. But I am a really big fan. I don't carry my macro out of the house. I do love this V90. I bring this thing all kinds of places with me. It is such an awesome device to have. So that's my personal preference. I would probably take the V90. This does have its place within the retro emulation history. And even though Powkiddy has made over 50 devices since 2018, this being one of the ones that I think they kind of forgot about after they designed it, if you don't buy it to play it or it doesn't get community support, this thing looks really good on your shelf. So this is a great device to have up on your shelf that people are going to grab at just because it does look like the Game Boy Advance that they grew up with. But if you're a collector, this is just one worth, I think, probably adding to the collection. Because even for some of the sketchy gameplay that it does have, the little bit you will spend on it is still going to cost you less than bringing the family to McDonald's. And this will get you a little bit more joy in the end. And nobody's going to be begging for toys. And if they do, you can hand them this. I personally would take the V90 over the A30, but that's all personal preference because they're two different form factors too. And maybe we'll get lucky with GarlicOS 2.0 being able to work on pretty much any hardware. Maybe we'll be able to make a bootloader for this and put GarlicOS on it. I'm not crossing my fingers, but that is kind of the theory behind the new GarlicOS 2.0 to an extent. So it is a possibility. Now, this isn't a powerhouse, and I'm not sure if this chipset will have a bootloader for it or not, but if it does, we would be able to do that. That might be our last hope to make this into an incredible device. Because once you put some new software on here where you actually have a little bit of control, I don't think there's anything stopping this thing from playing Game Boy Advance perfectly, as well as 2D PS1 games and things like that. I will throw some links down on my thingamabob if you want to pick up any of these devices. Well, maybe not this one, but if you want to pick up these devices, or if you want to pick up the R36S. The R36Ss have been on sale a lot lately too because of Black Friday. Might be a good time to look, but otherwise, I mean, they still max out at $40. This is on sale right now as well for Black Friday, so they are exactly the same price. What do you think? What do you think about the A30? Do you think it needs a little community support? Maybe make it into a cool device, because it is really comfortable. It would be a cool device. I think the only thing that's held it back so far is the buttons, but I don't know. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Anyways, please don't forget to rate and subscribe and share this video with your friends, because sharing helps to grow the channel, and I can use all the help that I can get. Thanks for watching. Awesome, you're still here. I threw a subscribe button up on the screen for you, so if you haven't subscribed already and are interested and want to see some more content like this, please hit that button up there. Also, if you like this, I put a couple other videos up for you. Please feel free to watch those as well. I'm out.